always looking for a debate on the topic of gematria, and they don't really come along. And the people who do try to come along and debate the topic, they're very disingenuous. Um, Dan Barrett, who used to be a decent researcher in this community, has turned into a troll of this community for the last 5 years. And sure enough, right after we nailed the Kentucky Derby, on the back of nailing the Masters, on the back of nailing March Madness, on the back of being a hair off on the Super Bowl, where we still won because we did very well with our player props, and we hedged with the Eagles because we had the Chiefs in the preseason. You get this video, and this is par for the course. And when we nail things in the world of sports, there's usually a troll video that shows up in the world trying to debunk gematria. And as for this person who I refer to as the Cookie Monster, aka Dan B, he's put out a video that's just super disingenuous. And I want to remind people where it was very obvious that Dan B became either a troll or was a plant here all along. If you go back to the time of the scandemic, we were pointing out all of the 56 rituals with the scandemic, and all of the 56 rituals were performed by men who were of Jesuit education. From Donald Trump, again, the scandemic was declared 56 years after his Jesuit education began at Fordham. Gavin Newsom, who said 56% of California will get the virus in 8 weeks, which is 56 days, when he's Jesuit educated at Santa Clara. Trump went to Fordham, as did Andrew Cuomo, who was the 56th governor of New York, who was on TV every day talking about the virus. Anthony Fauci, Jesuit educated, whose name equals 56 in gematria, just like Corona, virus, equals 56. Boris Johnson, who announced the 56% more infectious UK strain while he was 56 years old after being hospitalized with C-19, and a number of other things. We're just pointing out all these 56 rituals. The Wuhan lab from 1956. Tom Hanks, the first celebrity with the virus, born in 1956. Now we literally have Hollywood making a movie using my quote in the trailer, Eddington, that's set in the time of C-19. And the movie's literally coming out 1,956 days after the pandemic was declared. And the movie, again, uses my quote about all the things that went down in 1956, including Elvis getting the polio jab on Bill Gates' birthday, which was also Jonas Salk's 42nd birthday. But anyway, when we were pointing out all this, Dan puts out a video just out of nowhere, and he's like, Zach's being super misleading with all this 56 and trying to say it has something to do with Jesuits. Just to make a point, I was at a Mexican restaurant today, and the salsa brand that they gave us, I just happened to run the numbers, and the salsa, the name of the salsa equaled 56. So just as easily, I could say that the pandemic is because of this salsa, because it also equals 56. And I was like, is this a serious argument? We're pointing out how all of these people who are Jesuit educated, when Society of Jesus equals 56 and the gazillion other things that happened, are all doing these 56 rituals. And you think because you ate at a Mexican restaurant and the value of the name of the salsa was 56, that that's just as strong of an argument? So anyway, I somehow, some way, this video showed up in my feed, and yeah, I just started to watch it, and I just thought, here we go again. It's like the exact same thing. And why release this video right after we nailed the Kentucky Derby? Again, show me who in the world just nailed the Kentucky Derby, the Masters, and March Madness. Called them all out of the gate, dead on the money. And we've done it year after year. We've done it year after year, nailing these futures. The video day this was produced had a very good day in sports. A lot of people had a very great weekend, taking advantage of the rig system with the knowledge. And then meanwhile, this kind of crap is being published. So I have this in 1.5 playback speed. I think it is still audible. We're going to listen to what it sounds like when disingenuous arguments are made. And I also want you to keep in mind, this man does work at a gas station, like the other troll of the community who live streams every day from his car trying to slander the work. Our two big online critics are gas station attendants. So think about that too in terms of the education level. And funny enough, the one gas station attendants continued to say that what we're actually doing is a word from Harry Potter. Now, Dan, aka the Cookie Monster, is also using the same word, saying that what we're doing is actually something from Harry Potter. Okay, here we go. The gas station attendant, aka Cookie Monster. Here we go.
Hey everyone, what's going on? So in the past probably 6 months or so, I've noticed that a big thing within the Gematria community is debating other channels about the relevance and the usefulness of Gematria. And one of the big channels is this guy Chaotic Truth that people have been on a whole bunch of times, and there's other people on the panel, and they think that Gematria is complete bullshit. And obviously I don't think that. I'm a person who uses it all of the time, but I do understand where these people are coming from, because there's lots of inconsistencies and things that are left unexplained when talking about Gematria that make people question the validity of it. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about these inconsistencies and how people are using this inconsistent way of decoding to try and prove that a cabal is behind so many of these things, and there's so many of these things that are rituals, when there's actually zero proof, and the way that people are decoding it, they have no explanation of the inconsistent things that are going on in their decode.
Can you imagine saying that there's zero proof? Can you imagine saying that with a straight face? Again, remember, this is the same guy who thought because he found a salsa that equaled 56, that throwing that example out was to say, well, how do you know this salsa is not responsible for the pandemic? Again, we're talking about all these Jesuit educated people operating around the same number ritualistically, day after day, documented multiple times a week, literally.
Code. And with that being said, it doesn't mean that I think that there is no cabal that exists. It's obvious. They hide things in movies. It's obvious that lots of the news is propaganda. They probably are coding things with Gematria and such esoteric knowledge within the mainstream media articles. But still, once again, the way people are decoding does not prove that. And I think a big thing that has happened, and the reason why people are decoding this way, is because, in my opinion, the truth community was created for a certain agenda. It was created on purpose. And there's lots of reasons that I will explain later in this video of why I think that to be true. But if you go back to when, a long time ago, when you start waking up, you always learn that it's the Jews, that it's the Freemasons, that the Catholic Church is part of this cabal. And what happens is a lot of people, they finally get to the level of Gematria that, they planted seeds for us to eventually learn some of this knowledge too, which I will explain. But once you finally get to this level, since you have this belief that everything is these groups, what happens is that you start finding words and phrases that are associated with it. And then in every single story, you're trying to say that they were coding it to this certain phrase or this certain word and coding it to this specific date, but there's no real explanation of why they would choose that certain phrase or that certain person's birthday, especially when the story has absolutely nothing to do with something like the Catholic Church or the Freemasons or the Illuminati or the Jews, But I'll come back and explain this. And who knows, this video might get deleted. Every time I make one of these, it seems like it gets taken down and I get a strike. The last time I made one of these videos, it got a strike within 5 minutes and then the video got taken down. So who knows? We'll see if it'll even stay up. But and the things I'm saying, I'm not saying this out of that I'm better than anybody and the way that I'm decoding is the only way and the right way and so on. I'm just pointing out the inconsistencies.
Of course, you're not better than anybody. You're a 400-pound gas station attendant who cannot discern between what's obvious propaganda in the news and what happened to your uncle last week. And that was always the problem with Dan's work. He would do videos showing the ritualism in the news, but if you ever watched his work, he'd always be like, but what's interesting is, like he'll be talking about 44, and he'll be like, what's interesting is last week, my Uncle Barney, we were having lunch, and he's like, this is the 44th time we had cheese sandwiches this year. And he's like, it just blows my mind because 44 was the number in the news, and then he just brought up that it was the 44th time we ate cheese sandwiches this year. He'd be like, does that really need to be in your video? What? So that's why he always seemed goofy. But then when he started doing it in 2020 with it just what seemed are you serious? A salsa bottle. Your lone example of the salsa is as good of an argument as everything just unbelievable. So anyway, just to understand who this guy is, 400-pound gas station attendant. Here we go.
And, I want to explain that I realize that a lot of it is actually mysticism. And a lot of these things that are going, the way people are decoding, it's actually using arithmancy and using arithmancy through English Kabbalah. It's not all about a cabal doing rituals. And I guess that's the difference between a lot of what I have changed my view on with it is that a lot of these things are mysticism. I mean, I'm talking about things that are going on within my own life, and then they show up in the news the next day. And other people are saying that that was the Jesuits or the Freemasons.
And again, for people who don't know, Gematria is a component of Jewish mysticism, which has been adopted into many other cultures and spiritual belief system. Again, we've gone over this, how the Templars got their hands on this knowledge back in the time of the Crusades, how it was brought to the church, where the term the cabal came from. Again, it's a historical record. So he's like, what it actually is it's like, what are you even saying? It's always been mysticism. Yeah, these people are using this system for spiritual purposes. Again, we are listening to a gas station attendant, so not the highest IQ, but just a lot of things that are said. It's like, should have you going, like, what does he even mean? Yeah, of course it is. Always has been. Here we go.
That were behind the story. And it's like, well, which one is it? Is it due to my mysticism or your mysticism? What a lot of people, I think, are doing is using a cabal as a foundation to understand the pattern, just as I'm using synchronicities and events in my life as a foundation, and then things are happening because of that. It's not actually some ritual by the cabal. And honestly, I don't really even want to make videos like this, but I feel like whatever's been guiding me over the years wants me to keep pushing and telling people about the things that I have learned and the knowledge that I have gained. I feel like I'm supposed to be true to people who are listening and try to get more people to break free of what I kind of think is a spell in relation to the use of Gematria and blaming everything on a cabal, which I'll explain here, but I just feel like it's my duty as a truth seeker to try to help people awaken and break free from some of the things that they are doing, because I don't want them stuck in that same idealism, or whatever word you want to say. I don't want them stuck in that same frame of mind for as long as I was, and decoding that way, because there's so much more to the decoding, and there's just so much more to learn with it. And I feel like we're never going to really get even more advanced with it when so many people are stuck in this very inconsistent way of what they're doing. So with all that being said, let me kind of explain some of this again, because I think it's very simple to understand the point of view that I'm coming from when I say a lot of these things. But one of the first things that just comes to mind with people who think that Gematria is nonsense is the fact that there's more than one cipher. And sure, there are lots of interesting things like Jesus equals 74 and cross equals 74, Messiah, gospel, all in the same cipher. And there's other explanations, like Osama bin Laden equals 47 and 110. Before we were using reverse even, just the two ciphers, Osama bin Laden, 47, 110, like building 747 stories tall.
See, this stuff gets really annoying, because he's going to be making the point of like, I don't understand why we're using 4 different ciphers. Well, because, again, it was written about in a book a long time ago, and day after day we show how the ciphers all work together. It's just such a disingenuous argument. I don't understand why we're saying this time it's this cipher, and we're never saying this time it matters. We're saying this is the system. You have to look at it in its totality. The woman who just died the other night on the Illuminati's birthday when her house was burnt up, and again, the day before the anniversary of her hit song. Forget how I put this in the thing. I thought I had it where I had a shot of all 4 ciphers, but here again, just from the top, this woman's big hit song was "I Kissed a Girl" 201. She died 105 days after her birthday on the Illuminati's birthday, Order of Illuminati 201 and 105. Also, her other hit song is Supermodel, and the Illuminati was founded in Bavaria, Germany. Claudia Schiffer, it just happened to be 249 days from her birthday to the Illuminati's 249th birthday. Again, she's born near Bavaria, where the Illuminati was founded. Her big year was 95, the same year as this singer. That's why this supermodel matters. And her birthday can be written 25/8, like Order of Illuminati. And where did the house burn up? For the singer, it burned up on the 93rd Meridian West in Minneapolis, Minnesota, which equals 93, just like Order of Illuminati. So those are the 4 base ciphers, all in her ritual. And here's Dan B in 2025, when we've been covering this for 9 years, and he's been here the whole time, now going like, I don't know why we're doing 4 ciphers or where the consistency in that is. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. And your timing couldn't be stupider. Again, there's pretty much nobody else in the world who just won on the Kentucky Derby, the Masters, and March Madness and had them all out of the gate. Here we are, and instead you're doing a video like this. I think as a truth seeker, I need to lead you guys to Decode Like Me, where I'm talking about how many sandwiches I ate last week and how, I mean, unbelievable. Here we are exposing the most evil shit in the world, calling out in spades when the scandemic's going to end from its start. What's going to happen? My guess is he probably went out and got the pokey doke, as dumb as he is. Anyway, let's continue.
You know, the World Trade Center's Twin Towers, 110 stories tall.
Not just 110, building 747 floors tall. 241, the 53rd prime, religion 53, it was religion. 79, like Society of Jesus, like Knights Templar, like Christianity, like how you had a Skull and Bones member in office who's related to those societies and referred to what they did as a crusade. Again, right there in front of your face is the answer for why all 4 ciphers. And all he had there was World Trade Center's 110 stories tall. Bad decoding.
I think the Pentagon even has Highway 110 next to it and a whole bunch of stuff. But a lot of times when people are explaining these things, it just seems like too much because they're not explaining why each cipher is important. You know, it seems inconsistent to them. Another thing is, once again, why, if they are secretly coding stories, why are they coding, like if there's a number 71 in a story, everyone will say that it means Catholic.
Yeah, like the very Catholic war in Israel right now that began on Putin's 71st birthday, 71 days before the Pope's. And then exactly 71 weeks later, Trump talking about hell to pay, and hell's also got that 71 connection. Yeah, and again, of course, Sol Invictus is 71. Zeus is 71, like Jesus. Yeah, like Catholic 71, right? A number used a lot in their rituals, absolutely.
And it's like, but
and again, I mean, just look at all the numbers. 145 more chapters in the Catholic Old Testament, 46 books in the Catholic Old Testament. The first Catholic president, number 35, killed at age 46, killed on I-35. The second one, number 46, elected 46 weeks after the Pope's birthday, inaugurated on the Pope's 35th day of his age. All things we pointed out way in advance, way before it happened. Why Israel was created on 14/5 at a major Catholic ritual, and now this war begins. Not to mention, we said like a decade in advance why there would be a major war starting in Israel while it was 75 years old, because Catholic Church is 75, and Dan's about to get to the point about how, why sometimes Catholic, why sometimes Catholic Church? Again, the point is, numbers and phrases have words, and the numbers behind those words are used ritualistically. When I say Catholic, when I say Catholic Church, they do fit rituals together that fit both of those patterns, just like what they did while Israel was 75 years old, 71 days from the Pope's birthday. Again, something we called out a decade in advance. And by the way, my post predicting that on my old website that I showed 1,000 times in past years, Google deleted it. Meaning they're getting rid of the evidence of how far ahead we're seeing what's coming. All right, here we go.
Why did they choose the word Catholic in that story? And then in a different story, they decided to go with the number 132, and they were like, let's go this one to Catholic Church. It makes no sense. You know, if the story's about some kid who drowns at the swimming pool, and his name equals 71, and then people are writing...
Again, and in some cases, we would point out how United States of America equals 132, like Roman Catholic, how the country was named that 132 days from the Illuminati being founded, which was founded by a Jesuit when the Jesuits served the Catholic Church. I think it's highly relevant, especially when you see that the first Roman Catholic Supreme Court justice dies on the 13th day of the second month. I think it's pretty easy to understand why. Weren't we not also pointing that out with 132 rooms in the White House and the building modeled after a Catholic, and why Trump would be coming back as the new split-term president 132 years after Grover Cleveland? Why are we making these arguments? The ones he's making right here, when we're aware of all these things and how understanding this knowledge has helped us see all this stuff way before it played out. That's why it's totally disingenuous.
Catholic equals 71, and then it's a Catholic conspiracy somehow. I mean, if the story told us that the kid was Catholic...
It's a Catholic conspiracy somehow. Okay, we're on their calendar, we're speaking their language, they're syncing things up with the Pope. I mean, why in your whole thing do you not bring up how the Jesuit motto equals 266, and the first Jesuit Pope's the 266, and he spoke in D.C., the Jesuit stronghold, on the 266th day of the year? Again, that's why you can just see that everything he's saying is total shit, because he knows all of this. It's not that he doesn't know, he does know.
It would make sense, but most of the time these stories don't involve anything to do with the Catholic Church. So it's weird how people are just placing in words that are associated with the Catholic Church because they...
Who's he talking about? Who's he talking about? Because when I point out the Catholic Church and the Jesuits, I'm always showing how it's synced up with the superior general and the Pope, and we're on their time. You could argue just through that alone that it does make sense to always look in that regard. We're on their time. This church that wants to dominate the world. So I don't feel like whenever I'm drawing these parallels, it's random. I'm talking about how the Jesuits are simulating cyber attacks and showing how cyber polygon equals 167, and 167 days after the Superior General's birthday, half of Europe's without power. Again, these things aren't arbitrary.
Programmed themselves. Each one of these words has 4 different numbers, and they programmed themselves with all.
I challenge anybody to ever find a decode where I did the plural of Catholics. And I said, oh, here's Catholics. Here's where I wrote the Catholic Church. Rarely will I ever bring that up, but I'll show how it just has the same gematria when you do it that way as Jesuit, the Jesuit order, and Ignatius of Loyola. But that's not something that we routinely even talk about. So yeah, there is still rhyme and reason to why you would look at that. But it's like last night, I do the video of Diddy, and how many 201s were there? There was like a gazillion 201s with all the Diddy rituals. We know who that number belongs to. The Jesuits. Diddy is Catholic. He wears a huge Jesus piece. So, yeah, this is just also BS what he's doing right here.
All of these different words and phrases, so every time they see a number, they have a word that is associated with the cabal that they believe is doing the ritual. Does that make sense? There's no explanation of why one story they're coding it to the word Catholic, the next story they're coding it to Roman Catholic, or, so on. Look at all these. Jesuit, Jesuits, the Jesuits, Society of Jesus, the Society of Jesus, Jesuit Order, the Jesuit Order, IHS, the Jesuit motto in English. There's no explanation as to why they would be doing this, And why would they choose, why are they choosing just the word Pope, right? Instead of Pope Francis, or...
I think he's trying to argue right now that why would we look at the motto of the Jesuits when it matches up with their history? Isu Somnum Salvator, 274, celebrating the son's birthday, the Catholic Church since 274 AD on the day we call Christmas. In reverse, 266, like the first Jesuit Pope. In reverse with numerology, 122, like the Pope's name. Forwards, 85, like Templar, when the Jesuit logo has the Templar cross, when they keep starting wars on the day, leaving 85 days left in the year. I mean... It's just like, I don't know why we wouldn't look at that and see where it connects with so many things. I know it just helped us with March Madness. Sun equals 54. Isu Somnum Salvator equals 274. Pointed out before the tournament why Todd Golden should get Florida their 54th win 274 days after his birthday. Kind of goes with Diddy being arrested at 54, 274 days after the Pope's birthday. When we predicted a year in advance why he'd go down at 54. I mean, are we really going, why are we looking at these things? We connect the larger patterns where it makes sense. It's not like we're just like, oh, we have this whole collection of numbers so we can figure out a way to connect it. No, we're making logical explanations for where things fit, undeniably, using it to forecast accurately.
Pope Francis's real name, or Pope Francis's full name, Why are they choosing to code a certain story just to Jorge Bergoglio and not
I mean, is he really making this argument right after the Pope's dead? He knows about the song Gematria, the killing name. Hey, Fat Dan, did Gematria, the killing name, just get performed on the 59th day of the year, 52 days before the Pope died, when Pope equals 52, and there's a 52-week calendar for the Pope? And did he die on the 111th day of the year when Jorge Mario Bergoglio equals 111? And then did they bury him on the 111 days before the Jesuit order's birthday? And then did he also die 201 days from St. Francis of Assisi's death? I mean, it's just unbelievable. It's like, really? You're going to try and make this argument right now? Unbelievable. Did we not use the 59 thing to explain why Benedict stepped down on the 59th day of the year and why the 59th election would be rigged for Joe Biden to be elected 46 weeks after the Pope's birthday? I mean, and they did just sync up Super Bowl 59 with Joe Biden with his Eagles winning.
Jorge Mario Bergoglio. There's literally no explanation why you're placing this in your decodes. And this is why people are saying it doesn't make sense, because there's no explanation.
I mean, it's just, I just can't even believe that he's trying to make this argument right now. There's no explanation. I think the explanation would be that his birth name is Jorge Mario Bergoglio and his Pope name is Pope Francis. I think it's a pretty easy explanation. He became a Jesuit in 58. We used the 2022 finals, called it out in spades in months in advance why the Warriors would drop Boston to 17-5 after Boston lost to Golden State. on the Pope's birthday. I mean, on and on and on. On and on and on and on. Unbelievable.
You know, why is it sometimes just Pope? Why is it Pope Francis? Why?
If you missed my video last night on what they did with the Pope and the video of Diddy beating Cassie, the 122 and 175 were both huge in the ritual, the way it was synced up with Diddy and Cassie in the video being released on 17th of May. It's just, I covered this last night. So again, there's just so many examples of how the ciphers work together in tandem.
Sometimes is his first name. Why is it sometimes his first and last name? Why is it sometimes his first, middle, and last name? Why is it sometimes a nickname that's coded? There's no explanation.
And he's lying. Have you ever seen me decode the Pope with just Jorge Bergoglio? I've never done that. Like, sometimes it's this. Who are you talking about? The whole second hour, the whole second half of this video is just my name over and over. So he's clearly talking about me. Where have I ever done a decode with just Jorge Bergoglio? It doesn't exist. Stop lying.
Even though it might sync up to what you think, there's not an explanation as to why. So it makes it mysticism. Another thing that people don't understand is the date calculations. Why, when people are decoding, why is it sometimes just the regular amount of days, and then sometimes it's this span of days? Why is it that, you know, in America, we write August 2nd as 8/2. But, you know, so if there's a story about that happened in America, and it was coded, there's a bunch of 28s in the story, we're saying, well, in other parts of the world, they write the date as 2/8. Why wouldn't they just code it to 82? Because that's how they do it in America, and the story is in America. You know, and whatever, vice versa. I understand the connections that people can make, but it doesn't prove that they're using this. And it's inconsistent all of the time. Sometimes people are saying it means because the date's 8/2, and sometimes they're saying it's because it means the date is 2/8. But there's no explanation about it. Or why does the days matter and not the month and the days? And then sometimes people are decoding it to the weeks, right?
Okay, how often do we show how both directions of the date matter? I mean, seriously, this happens all the time. We're showing why both directions of the date matter. Always go to the Scandemic. It's a classic example. You can write the date 11th of March, 11/3. Corona, virus, pandemic equals 113, just like the National Basketball Association, which had their ritual paired that day. The outbreak blamed on the Frenchie and the NBA when the Jesuits are from France. Or you can write the date 3/11. And the simulation for the Scandemic was event 201, put on by the Jesuit Klaus Schwab, who just happened to resign the day the Pope died, saying in his 88th year of life, it's time to step down when his name equals 111 like the Pope's. Another undeniable example of what's going on, but again, event 201 was the simulation. 201 is the number 311 in base 8 counting. What are the odds of that? Base 8 is computer programmer language, programming, just another mathematical system. Number rituals. So yeah, the 311 and the 201 both absolutely matter. And keep in mind, 311 is the 64th prime, like the spaces on a chessboard. And of course, International Chess Day goes back to Paris, France, land of the Jesuits, and it's celebrated on the 201st day of the year. And 64 is the year that Trump's Jesuit education began at Fordham. And we've always called Fordham the 88 University, and we just saw Dick Barnett of the Knicks die at 88, and we said, oh, based on that, looks like the Knicks should close out the series versus Detroit in the 88th game of the year, and sure enough, they did. Anyway, just all of this is unbelievable. Let's go.
So, I mean, it's inconsistent. Sometimes it's coded to the weeks. Sometimes it's coded to just the days. Sometimes it's coded to the month and the day. Sometimes it's a span of days. Sometimes when it's 32 weeks and 5 days, people say that it means 32 weeks, even though that to me seems more like a 325. But once again, I'm just being real here. These are the things that people are questioning, and it is super duper inconsistent, especially when you start placing in all these words and phrases with.
So let's ask a real question. Is it inconsistent? Like, let's look at Diddy last night. We pointed out how from his arrest to the trial start is 231 days or 33 weeks. And we pointed out that his character in Monsters Ball, who gets executed, that character name's 231. One of the stories that came out had the 231 encoded all over it. Off the top of my head, I can't remember, but I remember we looked at two 231s last night. We said, that's interesting. Is that some kind of predictive programming? But the 33 weeks reminds that his father was murdered at age 33, and it had to do with his association with Frank Lucas. And 33 is a big number in New York, where Diddy's family comes from, and we know that 33 is special for a whole lot of other reasons. So he's trying to argue that it's inconsistent to look at the days and the months. And you know, I'm not one to do the days and weeks. That's never been my thing. A lot of people do that. You know, Derek Derek's the worst about that. The way he'll chop up a date and just try and get. Again, that's what Derek does to make anything match up. I sort of see where he's going if he's criticizing Derek, but I've always just looked at the days or the weeks and how oftentimes they both fit together. Again, just this is horrible work here by Dan.
With no explanation of why they're being used in the story. And sure, you can build a good narrative because there's a million dates and whatever that you can sync it up to. I mean, think about it. Like, how many times like do people say that it's decoded? They're coding the story to like the Arturo Sosa's birthday because he's the superior general of the Jesuits, and then other times it's the day the Jesuits were formed, and other times it's the day the Jesuits were recognized by Rome, and other times it's Pope Francis's birthday. Now it would be connected to his death day.
And what he's saying right there, sometimes you're doing usually what we're doing is showing how it lines up with all of them. How it's like boom, boom, boom. Look at how we're looking at the 4 base ciphers. We're like, look how perfect it is for this ritual to land on these days, synced up with all these key dates to the Jesuit in history. How many times was the ritual perfectly aligned with the Pope and the superior general? Constantly. So again, just every argument here is totally dishonest and disingenuous. The whole thing is lies.
It'll be the day that Ignatius of Loyola became a saint, or the day he got hit by a cannonball, or the day he was born, or the day he died, or you know what I mean? There's.
Hey, Fat Dan. Did they start the first Jesuit Ignatian year on the day that he was shot with a cannonball, which is also the same day Billy Cannon died in history? The other year that you had the emergency fire bell went off on Cannon Day. Last year, Judge Eileen Cannon wanted Trump in court on Cannonball Day. Who do you think's doing this, Fat Dan? Who's doing all the cannon stuff on Cannonball Day? And did the Jesuits themselves not start their first Ignatian year on the 500th anniversary of Cannonball Day? And did it end on his death anniversary? And by the way, is it not true that 60 weeks into that thing, Trump said he was going to run in the next election, which was the 60th, exactly 60 weeks into it, and his ex-wife fell down the stairs and died that day, and his name equals 60, and he's Jesuit educated. Not to mention the million other things they did with the calendar, the whole thing with Russia, Ukraine, 201 days later, the national headlines about how the statue unveiled at the United Nations looked like a tribute to the beast from Revelation when we know number of the beast equals 174. And they unveiled that statue 174 days into the first ever Jesuit Ignatian year when the Jesuit fingerprints are all over the United Nations from the beginning. God, it's just, I mean, do you still have to work at the gas station doing these kind of shill troll videos? I mean, God, I hope somebody's paying you good to do this.
A million different days that you can sync all this up. And then you take all of these phrases that people have and think about all the words and the numbers that can be associated. I mean, there's literally going to be a way to sync it up.
Dan, I challenge you to show a time in history where I did the word Catholics for a decode, and several of these other things you have up here, but just since it's right at the top of your list, show me where the Catholics decode was, please.
To one of these certain special days that exist. And a lot of times nobody is explaining why that is important. They're not explaining why they chose to sync it to Arturo Sosa's birthday and not Pope Francis's birthday.
I mean, just, again, look at the list of days he has. Do we not show the special, specific rituals they do on those days? The day the Vatican was established. 2/11. Remember what they did in the Super Bowl? The first ever Super Bowl on the Vatican's birthday? Andy Reid and Mahomes won 25-22. Vatican equals 25 and 47. 25 winning points, 47 winning score. It was Super Bowl 58. It's in the time of the first Jesuit Pope who became a Jesuit in 58. Pope Francis equals 58. Andy Reid and Mahomes, the Super Bowls they'd been in, the scores just happened to add up to 211 on 211. 211 total points. The 47th prime. First Super Bowl in the 47th season of the NFL. The day the Jesuits were formed, August 15th. I mean, there's something crazy on that year every year. Trump's brother died in recent history. Afghanistan's government collapsed. And that whole war started with the two towers becoming zero before they became one. I just talking about, just for example, Diddy last night. He was accused of, penetrating a woman who didn't want it and impregnating her when the word pregnant equals 95. And September 27th, that day leaves 95 days on there. Yeah, again, when these days come up and there's perfect rituals every time, why wouldn't you point it out? He's saying this is so many days to point out for rituals. He's got August 15th, September 27th, February 11th, Pope Francis's birthday. Yeah, Saturnalia, which equals 116, and he gets buried on a Saturday, the 116th day of the year. Every year, major Saturn tributes on Saturnalia. We cash in sports every year. It's one of the best days of the year for rig sports. Pope Francis' death day. Are we trying to argue that didn't matter, that Mr. 111 died? I mean, what are we doing here? The day Pope Francis became the Pope. I'd say pretty relevant. 72nd day of the year, Jesuit order. 3, 13, 13, prime numbers. 3's the second prime, 13's the sixth. So it's 266, like the 266th Pope. The day Ignatius Loyola became a saint. Honestly, I don't talk about that one very much because I don't even know what it is off the top. So I don't know who he's talking about. April 19th? I mean, every year, mega rituals on April 19th. Cannonball Day, just went over it. The day Ignatius Loyola was born. Actually, off the top, I can't even think what day that is, so I actually must not bring that one up either. But I bet they do rituals on these days. What are we trying to argue here? God, this guy. Stick to the gas station.
Once again, it is very, very inconsistent. And this is what makes it...
And just keep saying, it's very inconsistent. No, it's not. No, it's very undeniable is what it is. It's very undeniable. The Jesuits' original mission to counter the 95 Theses, recognized on a calendar named after a pope on the day leaving 95 days left in the year. It's undeniable is what it is.
Mysticism. It doesn't prove a ritual because you're just using mysticism to understand a pattern. Now, say there was a story about Donald Trump and Kim Jong...
Again, just gas station level IQ. What do you mean? You're using mysticism to understand a pattern? Is that what he just said? Yeah, that's exactly what we're doing, moron. We figured out that there's this mysticism that's in use in the world by this cabal, and this is what they do, and this is how we understand it. How do you think that sentence debunks what's going on? God.
Jong-un in the news, right? Donald Trump, Kim Jong-un, and that story was about a $48 million missile that was going to be shot or something like that. $48 million. Now it would be fair to write Donald Trump equals 48. Kim Jong-un equals 48. The story came 48 days before Trump's birthday. You see, these things make sense to code to the story because they actually are involved in what the story is about. You know, like Donald Trump equals 48. Kim Jong-un equals 48. But once again, people are still going to say, you know, why are they in different ciphers? But the point I'm making further, though, is just the fact that, you know, what people are doing in their decodes is then writing Illuminati equals 48. And then they're writing Freemason equals 48. And it's like, well, that's interesting, but that doesn't really prove that they're coding. You know, why did they choose Freemason and not Freemasonry or not ancient accepted Scottish rite of Freemasonry or not just Scottish or, you know, why did they choose Freemason? It's left unexplained. It's just straight up just your belief that that's what they're coding it to. Same with Illuminati. Why didn't they code it to Order of Illuminati or the Order of Illuminati or Bavarian Illuminati? You know, just because you can throw in a certain phrase like that and it does link up, it doesn't prove that they actually were choosing that phrase and to code the story with. You understand what I'm saying? Unless you can literally explain why they chose the words Freemason there and not Freemasonry and so on.
Do you see how as he's doing this video, he's not showing any specific examples of anything? Because normally if I do bring up Freemasonry or the Illuminati, I give a very logical reason why. Like how Bavarian Illuminati does equal 188, and you just saw the girl die, the singer who originally sang I Kissed a Girl, how she died 188 days after Katy Perry's birthday. And she also died 4 days after the anniversary of Katy Perry's release of the song When Four's Associated with Death. And Katy Perry released her version of it 13 years later, like how the Illuminati started with 13 families. Again, when I bring up these things, I always have a number of examples to say why that matters. So notice, just as he goes through, it's just bullshitting with no pinpointed examples. He's making it seem like we just throw it out whenever we want because we need to make it match. No, that's not how my work ever is.
It doesn't prove it. It'd be like just writing in any random phrase that equals 48 and saying that that's what it means. Because there's literally no proof and no explanation of why they would choose a certain thing. You know, that's why a lot of people, when they're doing stuff, they write like, Jesus is the Savior. I don't know if you've ever seen a bunch of people decode like that. And then they'll see 111, and then they'll write, Jesus is the greatest ever, and it'll equal 111. And then they write this big old list. And to me, that's just ridiculous. It's just, sure, if you understand that that's just mysticism, that's okay. But, you know, it doesn't prove anything. You know what I mean? And that's no different than when people are writing Freemason in the story that has nothing to do with Freemasonry. I mean, other than your belief that they're coding that word, but you're not explaining why they're coding that word. There's no...
Again, give an example, moron. What are we talking about here?
No explanation why they didn't choose that instead. Now, if the story involved a Freemason who sold the story literally said, like, this guy was a Freemason, and he sold that $48 million missile to Kim Jong-un, and then it would make sense to write the word Freemason, because the story actually involved something to do with Freemasonry and a Freemason, right? But still, it leads to the question, you know, why would they just choose the word Freemason and not Freemasonry to the story? These are the things that people are asking. These are the questions that people are not explaining, and without explaining these, it just it doesn't seem to be legit to people. Or what about this thing? And maybe I'm wrong here. I don't know what the deal is, but there's a lot of times where people will change this. They'll say 129 is 201 in base 8 counting. Like, what does that even mean? 120.
Okay, now, see, the thing about this part is he knows damn well about how Georgetown, the first Jesuit university, equals 129. We also see how these numbers get paired a lot. We'll see where it's like 201 days from the one person's birthday involved in the story and 129 from the other. Again, the first Jesuit university is 129. 129 is 201 in base 8. And again, just event 201 was the pandemic simulation put on by the Jesuit Klaus Schwab. The pandemic declared on 311. 201's 311 in base 8. Seems pretty intuitive to me. Okay, just because, you don't use base 8 counting at the gas station when you're putting 20 on 5 doesn't mean it doesn't matter. Moron.
29 is the same as 201 in base 8 counting. Is there a reason that people are using base 8 counting? Like, we don't use base 8 in our math. So maybe I'm mistaken, but is there a real reason that people are changing it to base 8 to make it a 201? It really makes zero sense that if we don't use it, then why are they changing it?
So somebody in the chat, I don't know if you're lying or not, because I don't know what Dan. I know Dan's been horrible over the years at predicting sports. I don't think he's ever hit anything. He used to be a big Lakers fan too, and that's the crazy thing too. I mean, after seeing what happened to Kobe, he's oh my god. But so somebody says that Dan had Owen Almighty and Sandman to win the Derby. Again, we had it right over here, sovereignty. And why is he putting out this video trying to knock me when he's using the knowledge poorly and losing again? And we're getting it right again. What's up with that? Shows you what this video is really about. Talk about sore.
There's also base 6 counting where 201 is 72. And there's base 12 counting where 201 is 289. And there's base 16 counting where 201 is 513. Why does base 8 counting, what does that have to do with anything? It's just another way to find the 201 and then blame it on.
Base 8 is a common form of counting for computer programmers. I'm not sure about the other ones, but base 8 is.
The Jesuit order. Which, don't get me wrong, there is a humongous pattern with the Jesuits and the number 201, right? Pope Francis's full name equals 201. He stayed at the room 201, which was called the Domus Sanctae Marte, that equals 201, and 201 Jesuits were saved by Catherine the Great, yada, 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 There is a pattern with 201 and the Jesuits, but once again, that doesn't mean that every time there's a news story and there's a number 201, or a sports game, or anything connected to the number 201, it doesn't prove that the Jesuits were responsible for that 201. Unless the story was about a Jesuit or even something to do with the Catholic Church, it doesn't prove that they're responsible for that pattern. It doesn't prove that it was some ritual. That 201 might be connected to something completely different that has nothing to do with the Catholic Church. The point is, it doesn't prove a ritual existed. It doesn't prove that it's even...
See, as he does these examples, think about how many just super concrete examples there are of 201 in the Jesuits. Beau Biden's son's sacrifice, 201 days before the Pope's. Now we use that to show why Joe Biden would become the president, and how the same... Again, we didn't have it until after it happened, but we realized that the same Jesuit priest whose name equals 201 did the funeral for Beau Biden at 46 and the inauguration for Joe Biden as number 46 on 20/1, the 201st day of the nation's age. Again, to be acting like we can't really say for sure if 201 is Jesuits with the history from their beginning up through the present, it's just impossible.
That 201 was even placed there on purpose by a cabal, because there's a million other ways to look at it. Same with, what about sports, right? A big thing is in sports decoding, there's no way people are millionaires. If this really worked, everyone in this community would be a huge millionaire. But people get a lot wrong. They might get a lot right, but they also get a lot wrong. And once again, it's inconsistent. One time they'll say it's connected to the coach's birthday and the coach's record. Next time it's to some player, or next time it's to the star player. There's literally no consistency to it. Sometimes it's connected to the home and away record. Sometimes it's to the all-time record. Sometimes it's just to their regular season record. Sometimes it's supposedly connected to the Pope. Sometimes it's, supposedly connected to, like, Thanksgiving, if the football game's on Thanksgiving, but then there'll be, like, 3 games on Thanksgiving, and one of them syncs up to the word Thanksgiving, and the rest of them don't, which, once again, it's inconsistent. They're not...
And that pattern comes in almost every single year. I mean... Again, you're listening to a guy who's been horrible at making sports picks, trying to criticize somebody, even though he's not thrown out my name yet. But again, the whole second half of this video is just my name over and over. Again, somebody who's done unprecedented work. Again, show me anyone in the world since 2014, essentially when I started putting out sports futures about a year into this work, who's done anywhere near as well at nailing futures, college, pro, All of these sports, show me that person. I can almost guarantee you they don't exist. And by the way, if you read down the comments, I said, how can you put this out after we just called the Derby? And he said, I bet you're lying. I doubt it. You're a liar. It's like, okay, we did. And I bet you know about it too, which is the real reason you put out this video.
Creating a bunch of multiple narratives. You're just noticing a bunch of different patterns and then trying to decipher the game through them patterns using mysticism. Sure, some of the games, it's obvious that some of the things are rigged. You know, it's very obvious that it's rigged, but not all of the things with Gematria that are going on are some...
Rebel Yell in the chat asks a question that was already answered in the live stream, so probably a troll. Again, the Templars brought back the knowledge of Kabbalah to the church in the time of the Crusades. Other people have used the knowledge. And again, if you had more of a brain, you'd already know that. If this system is real and does hold power, you could understand why other people would use it, and it seems to hold power, thus why they do use it and have people like you in a spell. Again, I do get annoyed when somebody comes in and knows my name. If you're coming out here and writing my name like you know me, but you don't know the answer to that question, it screams troll. Not to mention it was already answered in the video. All right, let's go.
Script by the cabal, you know? I mean, things like taking Kobe Bryant out with 4.1 seconds left in his final game, that seems like it was done on purpose, right? Of course, Kobe Bryant equals 41, and his retirement poem was Dear Basketball that equaled 41, and the helicopter that he was in crashed 41 minutes after takeoff, and the pilot's name equaled 41, and Kobe was 41 years old, a bunch of stuff, right? That, I mean, you still can't prove that it was a ritual. You can't prove that it wasn't just mysticism and a synchronicity, but it seems that that was done on purpose, you know? I mean, you can even go back to July of 2019.
Why not bring up, you know, the Robert Rodriguez film with Kobe Bryant, Black Mamba, which ends with an exploding helicopter and Kobe looking in the camera and grinning and going, legends never die. And how the tagline for that film equals 157, like Kobe Bryant, like how he died on the 157th day of his age. Again, the evidence does point to ritual plus a million other things. Again, my only question is, why is every argument you're making super disingenuous?
I have a video.
And let's not forget what happened with the Super Bowl the next week, which we nailed off the Kobe Bryant death. And we already had it right before that happened, but the Kobe thing only added to it. And just for the record, you guys, I just want you to see these things too. Do you remember how Super Bowl 54 was the one that came the week after Kobe being Bryant's death? And we told you it was the Joe Montana Bowl, Kobe being Bryant 54, Joe Montana 54. Did you see what Kansas City did in baseball yesterday on May 4th? Let me show you if you missed it. Stuff's going on all the time if you're paying attention. Joe Montana wore the jerseys 19 and 16, like how the other year when the Chiefs won, they were down 19-16 and tied it up 19-all, and then became the first team to win back-to-back in 19 years, while Joe Montana was 67 years old, the 19th prime, and McCole Hardman scored the game winner, the 19th. But look at this. The Royals on 5-4 become 19 and 16, and look at the score of the game, 11-6. Whose birthday is the 11th day of the 6th month? Is that Joe Montana's birthday? We talk about this stuff all the time, the cross-sport rituals. The cross-sport rituals. The same numbers coming up year after year. They do this on 5-4, a date with 54 numerology. And don't forget that baseball is 54. And what are the odds that on this 5-4 Sunday, when Sun is 54, that 4 of the scores in the league would be 5-4? We liked the 54 rituals for Steph Curry and the Jets yesterday, and the Jets did give us a heart attack, but they won. In hockey, Jets 54 forwards and backwards, just like Steph Curry. Again, the knowledge is powerful and pays the bills. But you had 4 games with a 5-4 score yesterday, and you had to even got a 9-3, like the sun's 93 million miles away on average. Yeah, and we love the Braves to get to 9-5 at home yesterday on the 9-date numerology. Braves 95, won the World Series in 95, and here's Fat Dan talking this shit, uploading this video. Embarrassing.
I talked about how I thought the whole season was going to be scripted around Kobe Bryant. For one, because he was going to be turning 41 years old, and then he ends up dying in that season. But for two, DeMarcus Cousins had signed with the Lakers that summer, and DeMarcus Cousins tore his Achilles on January 26th of 2018, which coincidentally would later be the day that Kobe Bryant died. But DeMarcus Cousins signed with the Lakers that day, and DeMarcus Cousins' Achilles injury was synced up to the number with Kobe Bryant and stuff, and Kobe tearing his Achilles. And then DeMarcus Cousins got injured, and then they signed Dwight Howard on Kobe Bryant's birthday. And Dwight Howard was going to be 34 years old, which is another humongous number that I've talked about with Kobe Bryant for years. Nobody was talking about the number 34 at Kobe Bryant. My whole video is all about the number 34 and Kobe Bryant. But I guess the point I'm making is that I have a video talking about how I thought the whole season was going to be scripted around Kobe Bryant and his Achilles injury. And then it was scripted all around Kobe Bryant and his Achilles injury. And he even died on the same day that DeMarcus Cousins tore his Achilles. And, so I know Gematria, there's actual usefulness to this, and it makes sense. But once again, I still can't prove that that was a ritual. And it wasn't just the way the world worked. I mean, for real. Especially when this kind of stuff happens all of the time, every single day, everywhere. I mean, a few years back, the principal at the high school in town, which I live in a town of like 1,000 people, right? Really small school. They have 8-man football even. I haven't been to an 8-man football game ever. You know, it was 11-man when I graduated in 2001. I went to one game actually years ago. But anyway, the principal who I went to high school with, he asked if they could use my DJ equipment for the music and stuff and the announcing at the game because their PA was broken and they still hadn't received their new one to hook up. So I went down there and I hooked up all my DJ stuff and whatever. And, you know, we ended up winning. My school is called Booyer Valley, that equals 56. And we ended up beating a team with 56 points. And actually the score was 56-12. So we won by 44 points and we scored 56 points. So we won by 44 points. The team that we were playing was Griswold, that equals 44. Believe it or not, one of our star players got injured after he scored a touchdown. And his name equals 44 also. It's like, so one of the star players gets injured after celebrating a touchdown. His name equals 44. He gets injured against the team that equals 44. And we ended up winning by 44 points. So, I mean, with things like that happening, how can you distinguish it? How can you discern whether the...
Again, I've always acknowledged that there is an organic side to this code, but when you're saying, how can you discern? Look at the bullshit that is shoved down your throat every day in the news without any proof. Again, we see it over and over with sports and news. Anytime Cincinnati comes up, it's 51. Every time Cincinnati comes up, it's 51. And on 5-1, the national news story is the story of the police killing an 18-year-old and then his son coming back and killing the cop, and the son's name also equals 51. What is his name? Ryan Hinton or something? Yeah, it's Ryan Hinton. 51. Well, how did you know to run it forwards and backwards? Because that's the system, moron, as you know. We learned about it from a book. We didn't invent it. Okay. Yeah, it's just, yeah, there are organic things that happen. Because organic things happen, then we think everything in the news, which is all, what do you think, 9/11's organic? You think Cooties 19 is organic? All this stuff that's in the news is an obvious steaming load of shit with no evidence behind it. The only thing you ever see are the numbers.
Kobe Bryant one was really scripted, or if it just happened in the same manner, because this happens all of the time. You know, they didn't even have a PA again the next week, and I had to go back one more time, and we also scored 56 points again in that game. But if this was college or pro or anything else, everyone would say that it means Society of Jesus. But it's like, once again, why did they choose Society of Jesus instead of the Society of Jesus? Or why didn't they just use Jesuit or the Jesuits or IHS or the Jesuit motto? You see what I'm saying? It doesn't make any sense.
The question about the Manly P. Hall reverse ciphers, I did overlook it, but remember I got called out on it by that girl, Allie. She pointed out how in the book, it's in a different section. He first reveals the alphabetic order and alphabetic order of numerology, and then in another section, he reveals running it in reverse. So he didn't put it together in the same spot. He put it in different parts of the book. So I'm making the point it was there the whole time. Again, the point is it's all in the book.
There's no consistency or proof explaining why.
And for people who missed that episode, that Alley girl was acting like I purposefully left out that part of the book when it was an honest omission because it's not all in the same section. Anyway, let's continue.
And also, you know, while I'm on the topic of sports, how come, like, if you're at like Major League Baseball, right? Major League Baseball, it equals 162. And it is interesting that there's 162 regular season games. Major League Baseball equals 162. Or is it just baseball equals 162? That is very, very interesting, right? I find that interesting. But when you compare it to all the other major leagues, like National Basketball Association, it doesn't equal 82, and there's 82 regular season games.
Again, this part right here, it's like, why are we going this route? Why not be bringing up, because he was here the first time Warriors and Cavs met in the finals. I don't know anybody else had a video on the internet say why it was going to be Warriors and Cavs and all synced up with Nate Thurman and why they were going to meet in the finals 98 days after LeBron and Curry's last game against each other that year. And sure enough, they did meet in the finals, and the game went to overtime 98-98. And I was pointing out how LeBron's tattoo also equals 98, chosen one. Again, why not bring that up? Do all the leagues have to have a perfect gematria? Maybe in the future they will increase it to a 98-game schedule. Hard to imagine with all the players resting now, but baseball wasn't always a 162-game schedule. It used to be 154. Yeah, this is just another dumb argument here that he has. The point is they do use these numbers. They use the numbers of the league for the rituals.
You know, if you do that with hockey, there's not 82. It doesn't equal 82, like the 82 regular season games. You do that with football, National Football League, even
The
The
word
thing that I've been talking about like
oh
crazy
shit.
is the connection to it equals 162. And it is, people might be like, wow, that is pretty crazy.
I skipped ahead, but the word game equals 82. So not sure where he was when I skipped ahead.
Square and compass, and baseball supposedly founded by Abner Doubleday, who was a Freemason, but the guy who founded basketball, James Naismith, was also a Freemason, and Walter Camp, the football guy, he was in Skull and Bones. So it's like, why don't these things associate that same way? These are the questions that people ask. And a lot of times we're using this, the way it's decoded this way, to prove some ritual, but it doesn't really prove the ritual. And sure, we know that Freemasonry knows things about, using arithmancy and numbers and, the 33 pillars outside of the headquarters in Washington, D.C. that are all 33 feet tall and you have to be a 33rd degree member. And, a lot of that, there's all kinds of stuff that goes along with that, When you think about foundation and your vertebrae, 33 vertebrae, and Manly P. Hall even writes about Gematria and the secret teachings of all ages. So you know that it exists, and it's...
And again, just while he bullshits and talks about nothing, just think about things like this too, which we've used a million times. Look at Boston in basketball, 85-22, the most winningest team in the NBA. Boston Celtics, they were in their 22nd finals in 2022. Last year, we had them to get to 18-5 in the finals. When LeBron became a part owner of the Boston Red Sox, just for the record, Red Sox is similar too. It's got the 85, but LeBron became a part owner of the Red Sox 77 days after his birthday in his 18th season in the NBA, when baseball's 18. See what that means for Boston this year, because it's the Lakers' 77th season, and of course they got Luka number 77. But yeah, the point is the numbers for the league are used in ritualism all the time. So he's trying to instead of, and he knows these things, he knows all these things. So instead of making the point about that, he tries to go on this outside argument like, okay, they made baseball perfectly line up with how many outs are in a game and the length of a season. Why didn't they do that for basketball and the other leagues? And he did just skip over the meaning of the 82 game season. He acted like there was nothing to it when the word game's 82, and he knows that as well. So again, Dan being super disingenuous here.
Probably being used, but just once again, there's no explanation of why these things are being done. And without an explanation of why they chose each word,
Has there never been an explanation for why they do this? Have we not explained that it's Kabbalah a million times? That's the explanation, because it's Kabbalah. They're practicing Kabbalah. That's why they're doing it. The numbers associated with the word are the ones that get used in the ritual. Simple.
Each cipher is important. It really just makes it mysticism. Another thing that people often say, to make Gematria seem legit, is they'll say that the English language came out around the time of the Jesuits, the same time that the Gregorian calendar was released, and all of this was released at the same time, so they could perform rituals and coincide them and such. And then, you go on to say, since it was created by the Pope equals 52, that's why there's 52 weeks. And of course, words like Gematria equal 52, Kabbalah equals 52. And I mean, that's kind of interesting, but what about the Julian calendar? That's also 52 weeks.
The Julian calendar is not 52 weeks. He had to put up a thing. Don't you just realize how you just debunked yourself? They had to create a new calendar in tribute to the Pope that's 52 weeks. And then you lie and say the other calendar was that many weeks when it's not. Pathetic.
I mean, the Julian calendar had nothing to do with the Pope. It has to do with, it's named after Julius Caesar. That was the calendar that everybody used before the Gregorian calendar. It was also 52 weeks. So how does that make sense to say that Pope equals 52 and it was named in honor of the Pope, and that's why it's 52 weeks? It doesn't make any sense. Why doesn't Julius Caesar's name equal 52 then, if it also uses 52 weeks? And, why did they decide to code it just to the word Pope and not to Pope Gregory the 13th or whatever it was, right? Pope Gregory the 13th, or even just Gregory the 13th. Why didn't they link it up to that? Why did they just choose the word Pope? I mean, this was the actual Pope. You think they would use his name in the code, It sounds all cool and stuff, but, I mean, I've shown a million examples of this existing way before the Jesuits were even created when you look at the history.
Well, again, Pope is 52, just like how they had to perform Gematria, the killing name, for the Pope, like they said they would 52 days before he died, and the calendar system was made for the Pope, so maybe they were thinking beyond just that Pope, a 52-week calendar for the Pope. I think they were planning for it to only be in use in the time of Gregory the 13th. Is 13 divisible by 52? Is there something about card decks? 52 cards, 4 sets of 13? Anyway.
And then, why did they choose 52 weeks to code it just to the Pope? Why did they choose 52? Why didn't they code it to the 12 months or to the 365 days? Think about it. I mean, these are things that people are asking. And
Because the system was in tribute to the Pope, moron.
You know, they created these to coincide to do their rituals and so on. For one, have you ever studied how all the Gematria connects to the Julian calendar? It might connect to that as well. You know what I mean? There's lots of different things. I mean, there's a ton of other calendars that haven't been studied that it probably could connect to as well, not just the Gregorian. But, you know, for all these rituals and stuff, the Aztecs, right? The Aztecs.
Do you just see how his whole video is about just like trying to cast doubt with no clear pinpointing of anything? He's just like, how much shit can I shovel to try and bury the truth? God, this is pathetic.
Way before the Jesuits, they had a 52-year cycle calendar even, and the history tells us that they actually ritually sacrificed people. So even the Aztecs had a connection to the 52 with calendars that had nothing to do with the Pope or the Jesuits. And if it was created for these rituals and such, and for this cabal to do rituals and connect to, then, I mean, how can you explain things, you know, all of these things that go on every single day? Like, why was I born in the year 82, 82 days before my mom's birthday, and my mom's full name, married name and maiden name both equal 82? And my dad's name equals 213, and I was born 213 days after his birthday. My parents' birthdays are separated by 2 months and 13 days.
See, this is how his old videos would be, because he'd be like doing a video on 82 in the news, and he'd be like, and by the way, I'm born 82 days from my mom, and be like, okay, that doesn't need to be in the video. We all understand there's an organic side to the code. That's probably where this whole idea in Kabbalah that God created the world with numbers, letters, and words came from, giving some merit to the system. I don't know why. Him and Derek both kind of struggle with this. Obvious bullshit in the news, cooked up by the numbers, playing God. Simple. Simple. Anyway, I gotta go pick up Sweet Girl. If you guys want to continue this video, it's at Dan Barron's channel. Again, you are listening to a 400-pound gas station attendant. And like somebody said, he probably has eaten too many of those Slim Jim beef sticks at the counter, because as time's gone on, he seemed to get stupider and stupider. And he was on the record in 2020 saying that he could just as easily say that the reason all of the 56 is encoded in COVID is because from the bottle of salsa he was eating from, the type of salsa also had a gematria value of 56. And when I still remember where I was when I heard that, because I was actually listening to his stream while I was mowing the lawn. And I was just like, this is unbelievable. Did you really just say that? God, I know you're fat as hell and your mind is obsessed with food, but because your salsa bottle equals 56, that's as good of an argument as what we've shown about all these Jesuit educated people speaking in 56s for the virus that was the 56 virus. I mean, and don't forget, Trump declared the Operation Warp Speed on 15/5, and Gavin Newsom was the first mayor to lock down his state, saying 56% will get it in 8 weeks, which is 56 days. And look how Gavin Newsom, who's Jesuit educated, overlaps with the virus. 56, 142, 155, and a million other things. Of course, his name's also 52 in the same ciphers, California and government. Well, how do you know he's 52 because of California? Because actually I'm eating salsa today, and on this salsa bottle it says 52. All right. Yeah, if you guys want to continue, we're at the 32-minute mark. I do got to go pick up Sweet Girl. Otherwise, I go further. But we've already heard enough. It's a total load, so. All right, we'll leave it there for now. Thanks again to everyone who gets the like and the share. And Dan Barron, if you're out there, a.k.a. Cookie Monster, come on and let's debate. Let's debate. Instead of doing a 2-hour video talking to yourself, just sounding dumber than hell, come on my stream and let's go over these things. I just want to see if you laugh. Are these videos edited? Are you hiding the laughter? Because I still can't believe what you said about the salsa bottle 5 years ago. And I think it's the first time I've heard one of your videos in 5 years. And seriously, why did you put up this video the day after we nailed the Kentucky Derby? Fresh off nailing the Masters. Fresh off nailing March Madness. And by the way, for saying I'm a liar about that and I didn't call any of those things, do you want to bet $10,000, Fat Dan, and any other trolls? Because a lot of trolls left comments that I didn't call sovereignty, which is a complete lie. Does anybody want to bet $10,000 that I did not call those 3 things? Because I can back it up by just playing the live streams that were given to the Patreon members. I can just play the Patreon videos and prove that all 3 of those things were called. Who wants to bet $10,000? Put your money where your mouth is. You want to bet more than $10,000? How much do you want to bet? Want to bet $100,000? You want to bet $1 million? How much do you want to bet? I'll be happy to take your money. I can put my money where my mouth is. I know exactly what I called. All right, we'll leave it there for now. And until next time.